And there was a moment I nearly went like this. I knew there was going to be some criticism, but I just had no idea. I said, you seriously need to discuss postponing this tour.
You've already mentioned and referenced Lewis Rees-Zammit. I've got to go there because you mentioned facilities then. And we're talking about some of the best facilities that he's gone over to the NFL. But here's a lad actually who was on the podcast a few weeks ago. He's done everything he wanted in rugby, Gas. He's achieved everything. What are your thoughts now, like, you know, seeing him make that transition into the NFL? I personally feel it's a good thing potentially for the profile around the game, but he is one of your star players. That rugby's not inundated with athletes like him. Just your thoughts on all that, please.
Yeah, look, he's a big loss to us because he's a lot bigger than people think. He's obviously quick, he's powerful, he's skillful. I saw a change in him during the World Cup in terms of his attitude and his preparation and the time and effort, and he didn't hardly miss a training session where he was probably guilty in the past, having little niggles and stuff. And whether that was a mental thing or not, I'm not too sure.
Gats, he definitely missed a couple in Switzerland. I can assure you, he was on the side of the pitch in Switzerland for a couple. I can absolutely promise that.
It wasn't too bad in terms of I kept at him, just saying, and then all of a sudden I think he had a week in a row, and 10 training sessions in a row, and I kind of went and made a joke and said, "Are you okay?" And he looked at me, and I said, "Well, you've just broken your record for the most consecutive training sessions." And every couple of days I go, "Are you sure you're okay? You continue to keep breaking your record." So look, I think he's still a young man. He's only 23, and I look at it. The thing that was frustrating for me wasn't, and it just happened so quickly, and so it was just when we were announcing the squad, and then all of a sudden he wasn't available. It was just we were running around a little bit, sort of chasing our tails. But when I thought about it and I looked at it, I'm going, well, here's a young kid. He's following a dream, something there's a chance for him. And, as a father and that, and not just in sport, but anything, it's just, it's fantastic that people can have an opportunity to do something different and follow their dreams. And if he makes it, absolutely brilliant. And if he doesn't, then, he'll still be 25, 26 and, hopefully come back to rugby. It's going to be really tough for him. It's going to be a real challenge and trying to pick up the game and do those sorts of things. But look, he's going there to do that. And Jim, like you say, could be really good for the profile of the game. He's a good looking lad. And so all the girls seem to love him and stuff. So
he's taken now. I don't know if you've seen the latest one. I don't know if you've seen his latest.
It's a pretty good starting point, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you do that, and girls get excited, and young females, and you broaden your the base in terms of creating an interest. And if he does that, I think that'll be brilliant. If he makes it in the NFL, then good luck to him. And if he doesn't, then he'll have other opportunities. So, look. The disappointing thing, he's lost to us, but I've got to support him 100% in terms of his following his dream to do something different, and hopefully he does well.
Gats, we've just mentioned about Louis going to America, yourself and Jim visiting Japan and things. Where you spent a bit of time back in New Zealand after the Six Nations. Where do you sort of see the game? Where do you think the game is at the minute in terms of whether it's France, whether it's the URC, whether it's Japan? Sort of where do you see the game at the minute in terms of with what you've got coming up as well?
Yeah, I think watch a lot of the Super Rugby, and I think there's been some really good rugby played there, and there's no doubt that the game was massively affected post-COVID in terms of the impact that had, and where everyone's trying to come out of that and trying to build on the competitions. There's probably the Premiership in England. Your question is 10 teams enough for that to be a vibrant competition? France, you see the crowds in France. I mean, great crowds in the Premiership in England, but you look at the crowds and those sort of things, and that's what creates the atmosphere and the excitement. And probably the URC, there's quite a range, and you're not seeing massive crowds in South Africa, but some good numbers, particularly in Ireland, and the way that the game's growing there. So yeah, it's a mixed one. I think the game for us is there is a challenge in terms of, and I know World Rugby and everyone's talked about making it, how do you make it a better spectacle? And then they've been trying to do things with shot clocks and things and change some of the rules and speed it up. And I don't think the game below the international or the very top level of club rugby is in danger, because they don't have to deal with the things that are dealt with at the highest level. When you're talking about, very excellent athletes, people understanding systems and structures in defence, and there's very little space at the top level, and those sorts of things. But we need to try and simplify the game, make it easier for people to understand, and make it exciting. And I think there are little wee things that we can do just to simplify the game. I mean, to me, like the 50-22, it's not. If you just kick the ball from your own half, doesn't matter where the ball came from, as long as you kicked it and went out in the 22, make that a 50-22. It might then be that wingers stay back a little bit longer and create a little bit more space. It doesn't matter if the pass came from 10 metres inside the opposition half, those sorts of things. Or 2 minutes or a minute to go on say a team scores a try. Well, why can't the team that's conceded a try, why can't they just concede the 2 points for the conversion, so that's not wasted on the shot clock, and then just go and kick off if you've got 2 minutes to go before, rather than allowing the team to use 90 seconds up to kick the goal. So I think there's lots of little wee things that we can simplify the game on, and hopefully try and speed it up, but also make it exciting for the crowd and everything as well.
Gats, are you happy with the changes in the laws coming into play this summer in terms of the DuPont law, the scrum, the free kick from scrum,
the South Africa law?
The South Africa law. Is that something that you think will suit you guys? And is that something that you'll be working on over the next month?
I think that DuPont law, hopefully it creates more space until those people are put on side. I think that's a real positive, because you want people having that opportunity to counter attack and to do those sorts of things. The thing with any law changes, you've got to look at the consequences and what's the knock-on effect, and how is someone going to manipulate it, or what you can do. And you can imagine the only thing I'm worried about, and I think it's already been mentioned, is that free kick law, that if you scrum's under a little bit of pressure and you're in front in the game and you concede a scrum, and say in your own half, that's potentially we have a scrum in your own half, which is the opposition ball. You may see a team then, if they haven't already done that, engage early, and all of a sudden that's a free kick, rather than a team having a chance to scrummage for a penalty, and then they have to take a tap kick option. So those are the sorts of things that we need to, I suppose, once that law has been trialled, then to review that afterwards. But the pleasing thing is people are thinking about how we create more space, how we create more attacking opportunities, having the ball on the park for longer. I know the things with the shot clock in terms of having a shot at goal, but there's nothing more frustrating for me seeing a 10 stand there for 20 seconds when he's ready to take the kick, while he 20 or 30 seconds as he watches the clock tick down to the last 5 or 6 seconds. That to me is kind of like, that's not what the rule was designed for. The rule was designed to stop people from wasting time. But so there's a few things we just got to tidy up, and maybe if someone does that and is ready, the referee just says, get on with it straight away. No, don't allow them to stand there for another 10 or 15 or 20 seconds or whatever. So, but, there is definitely an interest from a lot of people to try and simplify and make things easier and make the game, hopefully more exciting for the fans.
Gats, clearly Wales are on a rebuild, right? You can see that, and you've earned the right yourself as a coach, but I think as a country with the success that you've had in recent years. Really interesting chatting to RG Snyman. We've had him on the pod, Eben Etzebeth. When you talk about, you throw out the headline, who's the hardest player, who's the hardest team you've played against? They say Wales. So we're talking about the double back-to-back World Cup winning hardest men playing rugby at the minute. They say that Wales are the toughest team. When you look forward now, Gats, what do you want the DNA of this kind of rebuild team to be? Like, what's it going to be based on? So if you fast forward to 3 years in Australia at the World Cup, how do you want this team to look?
Well, that's exactly what you talk about, being tough and physical, and that didn't happen overnight. It's kind of like tried to take a bit of pressure off the guys as we were preparing for the World Cup, because there is a huge amount of expectation as well. And so I said to them, when we talk about, and there are a lot of pressures in Wales, there are a lot of expectation, and it comes from, externally in the media, sometimes, this is a must-win game, you've got to win this. And so I said to the players that, look, I don't want you to think about winning. I just want us to focus on, let's just become a really tough team to beat. And if you become a really tough team to beat, then all the characteristics that you're looking for in a team come out of that, in terms of guys being desperate, playing for each other, just focusing on not giving anything away. And then often the result takes care of itself. But when you start talking about winning, and you talk about the pressures of winning, sometimes with younger players and people, that it can almost become a burden for them. And so you try and take those sorts of things away. But I tell you what, it doesn't take very long to lose something that you've built up over the years. And yeah, we were tough, we were physical, we were smart in the way that we played, we managed games extremely well. We talked about staying in the fight. We weren't a team that were going to put 30 or 40 points on any of those teams, but if we were in the fight and we took our opportunities, then we could win those games against South Africa, and which we had some good success against, and Australia and as well, and winning other games and championships and stuff. But it doesn't take long to lose that, and we're probably in that stage now where we're not fair. We probably have lost that sort of toughness, or mental toughness and physicality, and that's definitely something for us to probably go back to and start building up and creating that sort of and that's not talking about, it's just been smart in terms of the way we train. It's not talking about, I know there's lots of issues around head stuff and things, and I think we've always trained with an intensity, and when we do some of the contact stuff, it's not full on for 15 or 20 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes a week in terms of contact, 2 or 3 quality contacts for individuals over a week, because you've got to manage and look after your players as well. But yeah, we've probably lost that at the moment, and for us as a nation, been incredibly proud, and looking at the history and stuff of Wales, it's kind of why the Vikings and stuff, never wanted to come to Wales and try and take over Wales, because how mad they were about protecting their own land and things. So yeah, we've got to definitely get back and look at ourselves as individuals and almost like circle the wagons a little bit. So probably for me as a focus, probably going to this next campaign, and I think it'll be probably sort of theming something around where we are at the moment. Is kind of like backs to the wall, and I think we're backs to the wall from where we are, and what are the things that we need to do as a coaching team, as a group of players, when we've got our backs to the wall, and there's no better nation than Wales when they've got their backs to the wall in terms of coming out fighting for each other. So that's where we are at the moment, and we've just got to build on that.
Oh, Rob, our producer's shaking. He's loving it. He's getting shivers listening to that. So what you're saying is, Gats, is that all the Welsh lads are going to be rocking on tour with Mohicans looking like Vikings, right? Like fucking men possessed. Backs against it. Come on.
Yeah. I used to often say to them sometimes, before we go out in the game, before we have a team meeting, do we need to get you all on the drink and stuff? Because they are not afraid when they've had a few drinks down them to then, if there's a fight somewhere, they'll be into it, and they'll be supporting each other and fighting for each other. Or
that includes the wives as well, right? I've seen it all kicking off down
there. Gats, I just wanted to ask about, in terms of this is obviously a big rebuild and a big job for you and the coaching staff, but there's been a lot of talk around we were speaking off air about coaching being the easy part, and it's sort of how you manage your players and how you respond to your players, or how you manage your players. And I felt during my time under your leadership and under the group, it was kind of the management knew what buttons to press for each individual. So almost the rugby side took care of it, sort of thing. Whereas like you yourself with me was always, it was always sort of keeping me on a bit of a rein. It was not letting me get too carried away, not too many compliments. But then for some other guys, it was very much, you need to pump their tires up a little bit, sort of thing. Are you sort of finding that out about these new players over the last couple of months, and what is required for each individual?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I probably the biggest thing for me is probably over the last, number of years is and I've just got to be conscious of it all the time, is the impact of social media. I just think that I've just seen the external stuff and how negative it can be. How to get rid of that negativity from the outside, which can have quite an impact on individuals, and not just in terms of a sporting sense, from all walks of life. And it's often, to me, it's that loud minority. It's that loud minority who go on there, and it can be quite impactful on the players. And I think it's the biggest challenge that we face in terms of how to get young men to kind of ignore it, not let it have an impact. That a lot of those things, it doesn't reflect society. It doesn't reflect what 90% or 95% of what other people think and feel, and they just want to get behind and support players and want the team to do well. But they're not the people who go on social media and make the comments. And so, that's for me the biggest thing that I've felt has been a difference. And and so you question, and even like probably your language and stuff, and you talk about, it's almost like it's not PC to talk about being mentally tough, and it's not PC because the game is physical. The game is about mental toughness. It's about being resilient and all those sorts of things. But it's almost you've got to be, you can't talk about it. You can't challenge people about their resilience or mental toughness in terms of preparing for games. And so it's just trying to find that balance at the moment with sort of, young players coming through and probably their fragility a little bit to a certain extent, and where they're at, because that's, I think professional sport is about pushing yourself to the limits, being mentally tough, going through some tough times, coming out the other end, and that's what makes winners. And so there's a few things that we've got to be mindful of, but also not be too mandy-pandy about the way that we approach things.
How's Jenks finding that, Gats? I'd imagine that's a bit of a challenge for him. I was just going to say, I'll tell Jim and the listeners just a quick story. I don't know if you remember, in 2015 we were in Qatar for a World Cup, and like Louis Rizamet said, sort of Switzerland was almost a walk in the park compared to Qatar 8 or 9 years ago now. And we had this one set. Do you remember, Gats? We had that one session where basically the boys were just absolutely out, body sprawled everywhere, 41 degrees, whatever it was. And then the following morning, we did the session.
That one with Tom Francis was on?
That's the one with Tom Francis on oxygen, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad we plugged that anyway. But I remember the following day, I was tired, I was grumpy, I was grouchy. I mean, even more so than normal. But I remember I wasn't kicking very well, and I had a one-on-one session with Neil Jenkins. And I said to Jenks, I'm struggling here. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm struggling a bit. And he came up to me and he said, do me a favor now. If you're going to complain, go fucking sit over there and don't bother me for the rest of the session. And for me, that's kind of like, I suppose, like Jenks is the absolute, Neil Jenkins was just so good at that. He drives standards. And I suppose, Gats, going into that, is that something that you and the coaches have had to you've had to put maybe a bit more of an arm around players now, rather than perhaps in the period that had the likes of myself and that group coming through, you could probably ride a little bit harder. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and sometimes you want your older players, senior players, to lead that as well. You might get a youngster coming through who could be bitching and moaning, and rather than just I've was environments where a senior player would turn around and just go, shut the fuck up and get on with it, And kind of that's that's the kind of thing that, because it's tough. You can't tell me that anything that people have achieved, whether it's in sport or whatever, that they haven't gone through some pain in terms of achieving that. And they've had to push themselves. They've had to go through tough training sessions. They've had to do it in weather conditions. They've had to do it when they haven't felt like it, when they've been sick and things. And that's what makes champions. And that's what makes champion teams that are prepared to go that extra mile and work hard. And so, there's probably some education around that and kind of some history around talking about those sorts of things, and how we manage all those aspects of it, and going through the process. And I suppose that there's no doubt that probably all of us, you talk about Jenks, but even him, it's kind of like your language probably is a little bit more gentle now and kind of not so abrupt and direct and things, but that's just a change in society and changing individuals that you're dealing with.
I should have started now then, because I'd have had a nice easier ride with Jenks. I can promise you Jenks' language wasn't like that with me, I can assure you.
But how funny, Neil Jenkins, he probably had 3rd-degree burns and he is not flinching. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in sunstroke to the max, and if he's not moaning, then no one else is. But Gats, because we got Biggs in the studio, what was he like to manage as a player?
Oh, he's a nightmare.
Did he need cuddles or not?
Oh no! I tell you what, look, he was a great professional in terms of that, and he demanded excellence from everyone else, and the expectation that he put on himself, and and the standards in terms of reaching those high standards. So, like I said, that experience, you can't coach that experience over, but when you've got experienced and quality 10s, and he definitely was one of those, and had in terms of his kicking and his game understanding, physicality, good defender and stuff as well. So look, he was, but he always had an opinion, which and I love that. I've never been afraid of being challenged by coaches and players. They might get a short, sharp response from me, but I think that's what makes an environment, positive. That you want people to feel comfortable having an opinion and saying different things. So, Dan was never afraid of having an opinion, which was.
Gats, do you remember me and Mellum, Geth and Jenkins plucked up the courage in 2016 to come and ask, because we had a double day planned for Tuesday and Thursday. Oh. And we were basically the spokesman. We sort of got riled up by the boys to go and ask Gats, basically. And I think Gats knew what was coming, and me and Mellon sort of trudged over quite slowly and said, "Oh, look, I think the boys are a bit tired, and maybe we feel like we need a single day on the Thursday." And Gats's response was, "Tell the boys to go fuck themselves. We're doing a double day on a Thursday, and we're gonna front up on the weekend." So me and Mellon, I think the thing with me, Gats, I was able to read the room a little bit. If I knew it was a short, sharp answer, I'd get out of there. If I felt like it was worth fighting for, I could maybe fight my corner a little bit.
Cool, Gats. We've got to talk about the Lions, because we're about a year out, and again, having coached it a few times like yourself, is it going to be weird for you watching them go down to Australia? And the last one was in COVID, so maybe maybe it did. Maybe start with that. So that the one in South Africa, did it feel different because there was no fans?
Yeah, it was different. Probably for me is that I think that the tour should have been postponed.
100%, yeah.
And there was just a couple of nations who felt that the postponement of that would impact on their World Cup preparation. I just thought, I thought that was rubbish. Having a Lions tour without fans, to me, it's not about the rugby. It's kind of like that's what makes it special.
It's a Lions experience, Gats, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like I got caught up in. I have this romantic view of the Lions that it's like a celebration of the game, and you're bringing the players from 4 nations together. You're playing against traditionally one of the best nations in the world once every 12 years, and it's the fans who make it. It's a chance for the Southern Hemisphere countries to experience what we often experience in Six Nations games, where 40% of the crowd can be Lion supporters, and that's what creates that atmosphere. But if you go and watch an All Black game, an Australian game being played there, 95% of the fans are local supporters, so they kind of get to experience what happens during that Six Nations, and that are almost more important than the game and then the rugby and in terms of that experience. But it was the first time I felt like with what happened in South Africa, it was almost like it was a win at all costs. The ends justifies the means, and some of that stuff that was happening off the field with Razzie was, I just, and even in New Zealand in 2017, there was certain things in terms of the media thing. It was almost like, it's the game, and the Lions has almost like changed the teams that you're playing against. It wasn't didn't feel like it was about the rugby. It was about winning was the most important thing and how we did it. And it didn't, it was almost like things off the field or trying to upset players or the team or whatever was acceptable. And so, but it's an unbelievable concept. We should do everything we can to protect the Lions going forward. I really hope that Australia next year will be brilliant. We're touring Japan with Wales, so I hope to get down there for the third test. But I look forward to just being able to watch it as a fan again, and I'm really privileged to have had that experience and humbled by my involvement with the Lions, but really, really proud of that. But really, it means a huge amount to me. And like I said, I'll back the Lions as a team, and I think we should do everything we can to protect that and make sure it continues and flourishes.
Gats, give us your favourite Lions moment, you personally, from your 4 tours sort of thing. What would be the pinnacle from a Lions point of view for you?
Oh, it'd have to be the third test against Australia, just because of the pressure that I was under. I did.
With the Foxy and O'Driscoll.
Yeah, Foxy and Pickett, leaving Brian out, and then I knew there was going to be some criticism, but I just had no idea the level of vitriol that was and stuff. And you can understand sometimes from a media perspective, because we'd won the first test, Australia had won the second test and 2 close games, and everyone thought the momentum's with Australia now. But I went back and I can remember watching James Hall afterwards, and he had tears running down his face, and it was almost like the relief and the amount of emotion that Australia had put into the game. And I came away from that thinking, we didn't play as well as we could have. They've given 100% the emotion that they've put into that, and you look at your own experiences, and it reminded me of a game that when I was coaching Wasps against Leicester, and it was the last game of the Premiership round, like they said, the weekend. And in those days, it was just 3 teams, and it was 1 played 2. So we were playing Leicester at Welford Road, and it was Martin Johnson and Neil Beck's last game for Leicester. Now, I completely underestimated the emotion and what that meant to them as a team, or the fans at Welford Road. And I think they beat us by 42-26 or some score like that. And the following week we had to play Northampton in the semi-final. We had a good win over Northampton, and then at Twickenham, so 2 weeks later, we put 40 points on them in the final. And we were the team sort of hadn't, like I said, I had underestimated that emotion, and they weren't. In 2 weeks after that game, they weren't able to bring the same sort of emotion. You probably get 1 or 2 games in a season if you're lucky to be really on the edge emotionally, and we turned up on the day, and that third test against Australia kind of really reminded me of that. They'd did everything and given everything in that second test, and they weren't able to bring the same sort of emotion the following week, and we were. But I do remember there was a moment in the game where they have the cameras on there, and I had so much criticism beforehand. And I think it was about 15 minutes to go. I think Jamie Roberts had scored. We're never going to lose the game. I did look up at the cameras, and there was a moment I nearly went like this.
For the listeners, that's the double bird.
I refrained from that. So, I think that that was pretty special in terms of that. But I know there was a number of Welsh players that started that game, but I think you've got to give a lot of credit for the impact that the bench had. And there was they really came on, did a really good job. There's the last 20, 30 minutes, in terms of that. But look, we've had some brutal physical matches with the Lions and some great memories and stuff and things and opportunities to work with other coaches and work with other players too. That I've really relished it. It's been a fantastic experience.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy the Australia 2013 one. Just looked crap from where I was watching. Yeah, I didn't enjoy it at all. Unbelievable. Gats, just on that as well then, I know I joke because that was the one opportunity I had to go on a Lions tour. I got man of the match against Ireland for screaming at the front of a line out. My penalty count was down to about 9 per game, so I was pretty low in that year of the championship. But I love the Lions, right, as in always have done. That's what got me into rugby from 97. But I found something quite interesting. Maybe this segues Gats into the one coming up in Australia, because I don't know whether someone said this to me personally, maybe it was Graham Roundtree or it was out there in the media, because there is this kind of short tour, for example, you're only together for a short amount of time, is picking winners. So players that have been there, that have done it at the highest level. And that was the thing around the Scotland team, Biggs. We weren't winners. Like the generation that we had, we just didn't win games. And being at Saracens, I understood then what it meant by being a winner, because we'd win every game, regardless of playing good or not. And this brings me on to the next talk. That's like, how do they go about picking teams? Like if Ireland are the best team because they've got the best players at the minute winning championships, do you think it is still about that? Do you think there's going to be a change of guard now where it's been heavily Welsh players historically because of the success you've had in the Six Nations?
Yeah, I think next year's Six Nations will be big in terms of that. If you're picking 35 or 36 players to go on a Lions tour, you probably, if you're honest, there's probably 18 or 20 of them be Irish at the moment, and even that high. I mean, England have in the past had those sort of numbers when they've been really dominant in the 5 or the Six Nations. So. And that's a challenge for the rest of us to get up to speed, but also in the back of the mind is, and players are aware, but I flick the switch a little bit and saying that you go out there and you play well, but the team collectively plays well and you perform and do well, then you've got a good chance of being on that tour, and that's what you want to be. That's the pinnacle of it. We all love and really proud to be involved in the nations that we represent. But that the next step is having that chance to put a Lions jersey on and kind of then mix it with the very best against, which is a challenge in such short preparation, playing away from home, where the expectation is that you go out there and win.
Gats, do you think you mentioned it about obviously you took a fair bit of criticism for the amount of Welsh players that were playing in that final test, but do you feel like Andy Farrell now, have you spoken to Andy about what it entails of being the head coach? And also, do you feel like when you are coach of a Wales and Andy is of Ireland now, do you feel like there will always be I won't say bias, but I'd say more about those players, so it gives you a better idea of picking them or not picking them? Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, that's probably a reasonable assumption. But I'll tell you, in the past we've done a lot of stuff on looking at not just them as rugby players, but what are they like as team people? How would someone respond to, say, being on the bench or not being in a 23 for a test match, and there have been a couple of times where people have come back and said, if he's number one in this position, I think he'd be good, but I don't think he's the best person. Sometimes if he wasn't in the 23 or he wasn't selected and things, so there is a lot of depth that you've gone into and asked questions about the personality of players and what they're like in team environments, because you are bringing those players from 4 nations together in a really short period. And then, there's probably an element of knowing players who you trust, and also staff. Probably there's a couple of times when I go, but you think about your coaching staff working with people that you know and you can understand, and that you're not in a short period of time trying to bring someone into an environment where you haven't worked with them before, and even medical team and stuff, medical team, S&C stuff. So, I've met with Andy a couple of times. He's asked me about those sorts of things, and I've given him my opinion about, look at previous Lions tours where people have been on, have had that experience. They know what it's about. It is tough. It is really tough. And, it's like, Dan, you're sort of every day, and from a coaching perspective, you're preparing almost like two teams simultaneously. You're thinking about the team that's playing in the next game, but you're also starting to train with the other players that are not involved, and
your days off, your travel days and things.
Following game and those sorts of things. And I think, New Zealand too we worked out there was something like 12 hotels in the first 14 days from when we left London, and the first day that we had off as a team, that we weren't actually travelling, was the Wednesday before the second test in Wellington. And so logistically, there's so many things that that are challenging and stuff. And so having people that you know, that you trust, that you've worked with before, or they've been on previous Lions tours, can sort of circumvent that sort of that bedding in process, because you know and work with those people. But there's also people that you haven't. There might be some quality people that you know and that you want to bring in there because you think they'll add to the environment. So, I think Andy will be good in that aspect, and he's not afraid to reach out and ask for opinions and advice and stuff. And probably for me is that the biggest thing is, from a Lions perspective, when I did my homework and I spoke to a lot of ex-players and coaches that had been on Lions, and the biggest thing that came back to me was, if you can try and get some harmony within the squad, or not the rugby on the field, but try and get things right off the field, you've got a chance of being successful. And even with short tours, that I always said to the group of players that we had, and it doesn't always help with your preparation because you want to put combination together, but we said that everyone would get a start in the first 3 games. And for me, when I look back in my own playing career, if I was going on a Lions tour and the coach said that I was going to start in one of the first 3 games, well, I'd feel like, if I play well or the team plays well, then I get a chance to put myself in the shop window, and maybe when the tests come around, I might have a chance to be in the 23 or the starting 15. But it doesn't help your preparation. But I think at least everyone hopefully feels a part of it and engaged in it, and that's the biggest thing. The hardest thing about a Lions tour is the last week. Is because you got some players who
where are they?
Exactly. Kind of how do you they know that they're probably never going on a Lions tour again. You're never going to coach them again, and so you just got to be a little bit understanding that they might go for a meal and a few drinks and that, but they got to keep themselves in check. And so that's sometimes the biggest challenge that last week in a Lions tour. And for the players, it's been, for them, you think about, it's been such a long season, and they go straight from that thinking about being selected for a Lions tour and that. So they need to break afterwards, and sometimes they need to get away and relax a little bit and get away from the disappointment if they haven't had been involved in stuff, things if they're not part of that sort of the last game or something.
Yeah, because with everything, old traditions are dying, aren't they? But listening to you talk about the Lions, Gats, is awesome, because it is only around the corner. Do you know what I mean? And there is that argument, you think you mentioned it, or it's been brought up before, that does it still have a place in such a congested season and the amount of rugby? But I think you've answered that, Gats. It is the greatest still, isn't it? It's the greatest tour any player can want to be on.
And the other thing too is, let's not forget, and economic, how much money it generates. It is massive in terms of how much money that generates over basically. The rugby's on such a short period of time, particularly for those Southern Hemisphere nations, but also generates a huge amount of money back into the game.
That'd be epic.
Just a final thing we were saying about the last week on tour in New Zealand in 2017. I remember George Cruz.
Weird bloke, nice bloke, but weird.
Great bloke, but slightly weird. But we ended up going out for dinner. The boys weren't involved, and we ended up splitting like the credit card roulette sort of thing. So we'd had a few drinks and some food and things, and the bill came to about £1,500. And Cruz had a tough all week. I think he'd been dropped from the test team, and then he came out with us in midweek and ended up picking the bill up for £1,500 for credit card roulette. So it was a tough all week. But that's sort of thing. The difference between South Africa in 2021 to 2017. In 2021, for me, it felt like I was playing for the Lions, whereas in 2017, I felt like I had a Lions experience. So it was really, really difficult to combine the two. Yeah. But the biggest honour of my career, without doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in 2021, when you look at you're in the same place, the same venue the whole time. It's Groundhog Day, and there was definitely some staff and players who struggled from sort of the mentally from that, and not having fans and family and things. It was challenging. Like I said, that I don't think that tour should have gone ahead, and it should have been postponed. And the thing is that the ironic thing for me is that I wasn't thinking about myself, because I was thinking, and I said to the boy, you seriously need to discuss postponing this tour. And I said, but the thing is, I probably won't be available to go on that because I was contracted back in New Zealand. And but it wasn't about me. I was thinking about what was the best thing for the Lions and for the fans and things like that. And but it was right. Like you said, Dan, that was 217 was an experience and tough and challenging, and what was achieved there. And then obviously 221 wasn't, just it wasn't the same. And you want to be a part of that where the fans are so important to it.
The quote of the tour from 2021 was from Kyle Sinclair, saying this is the driest tour since 1967. So that gave you an idea of what it was like, but brilliant experience.
Yeah, so cool. The great Warren Gatland, mate. Awesome. I could listen to you all day, like genuinely. Awesome, Gats. Legend, mate. Right. Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys. Thanks. All the best. Yes.
Pod. Rugby pod.